Well, welcome everyone to Let's Talk, the show where we cut through the rumors, expose deep dark secrets, and explain the mysteries of effective learning strategies in higher education. I am your Let's Talk host, Marnie Roestel. I am also the Associate Director of Learning Systems Support at Central Michigan University. And I'm very pleased to have join me today our very special guest, Dr. Michelle Steinhilb. Welcome, Michelle.
Thank you for having me.
Awesome. First, a brief introduction as to who Central Michigan University is. Just like our name says, we are located directly in Central Michigan. Our university was established in 1892, and we have a long-standing history of providing outstanding education to our community of students. We offer 300 programs, of which 65 of them are fully online. And we also serve students beyond the Central Michigan area with 25 satellite locations around the state and on military bases outside the state of Michigan. So let's go ahead and settle in and get down to business. Michelle, this past semester, you took an innovative approach in your course, and I'd like to kind of take a deep dive into this, and let's take a start where it all began. You were teaching a 200 level biology course this past spring. How many students did you have in your course?
Yes, we had 72 in my class.
Okay, that's a decent number of students. In addition to the larger class size, I understand you also had an additional layer of complexity.
Yeah, so knowing that COVID was sort of on the horizon and affecting Michigan a lot during that semester. So we started in January and we ended in the end of April, beginning of May. So we had set the course up so students could either attend in person in our active learning classroom, which had plexiglass and students wore masks for distancing, but also students could join online, so fully online. We use Microsoft Teams as our online sort of interactive platform with sharing video and audio in that way.
Awesome. So you're teaching multimodal with students both on-site and virtual, which is not easy to blend those two audiences together, no matter how much experience the pandemic has given us in that. What were your learning goals that you hope to achieve with this group?
Yeah, so of course, first and foremost, it was mastery of the content. So we are teaching in this 200 level class, as you mentioned. It's part of a 5-class core series of courses, foundational courses that we have in our department. So every biologist takes all 5 courses. And so certainly we are tasked with making sure they understand the genetics well enough for these other courses to build upon the content that we deliver to students. The second thing is, as the third course in the series, with each course, we sort of ask students to kind of come to the table with additional preparation before class. So for my particular class, we asked them to come prepared to class by having read the particular parts of a chapter or a concept that we were going to be covering on a particular day. We provided a note-taking and study guide, which was a sheet that guided their reading, but we expected that they would have performed that reading on their own before coming to class. And then the third major thing that we focused on here in our program is these soft skills, the ability for students to have these really strong teamwork skills, to have problem solving and peer learning. And those are really important because we know as we write letters of recommendation and get requests for professional programs and for employers, they want these skills and they ask us specifically whether students have these skills. And so those soft skills were also something that were really important to us.
Yeah, I can see that. So you were using some different strategies in the past as part of your overall instructional strategy to teach the content. Can you share the methods that you had been using and what challenges you may have encountered with them?
Yeah, so prior to pandemic, we were using iClicker. And so students would, there'd be questions, multiple choice questions. They would use iClicker to answer those individually to test their preparation for the course. And then after they answered those questions, they would get those same 5 questions and they would work together in a team and they would use scratcher cards. So for anyone that's not familiar with those scratcher cards, they'll sort of multiple choice answers A through E, but the answers are covered up with that foil, like on a lottery ticket. And so if you thought the right answer was C, you would scratch away C. If it was correct, the star would be underneath that C. And if it wasn't, then you could take another guess at what you think what the answer might be until you got it correct. And so those were challenging, right? So for the iClicker, students had to purchase the iClicker, so there was an upfront cost for a student. We also then had to get the data from the iClicker, right? There's a receiver in the class. You go online, you collect that data, download it to your machine, upload it to Blackboard. Blackboard was our LMS system here at CMU. So that was challenging. And the scratcher cards, of course, right, those cost upfront money to pay for, which the department paid for. But of course, in the environment that you just outlined that we had to work in, none of those solutions would work. It was going to be very difficult to get students to be able to do those kinds of tasks using those technologies. So that's where FeedbackFruits really made a big difference for us.
So all the fun of a lottery ticket with 0% chance of winning any money.
That is correct. That is correct.
So I see the challenges that you had, especially with having a virtual audience where the eye clickers and the physical scratch off cards were not going to work.
Mhm.
So let's take a deeper dive and take a look at the more granular level details of what team-based learning is and how you used it in your course.
Mhm.
So as I understand it, team-based learning involves 6 phases, with the first step being, and you've already mentioned this, having your students be prepared for class ahead of class in advance. What did this entail for your students? You mentioned some guided notes and some other things.
Yeah, so they would check out those guided notes so for example, if we were talking about DNA replication that day, they would know the parts of the ebook that they should read and be prepared. There'd be some prompts that would tell them these are the types of activities we're going to be doing, and these are the things that you need to be prepared for. And of course, from the student perspective, those would be the kind of things that they would see when they come in to take the quiz.
Okay, so then the next 2 steps once they're in class involves something called an IRAT and a TRAT, which makes it sound more like we need to call pest control, but that's not involving mice in any way. So what does those 2 activities look like?
Yeah, so the first one, the individual readiness assessment test, the IRAT. So that was sort of like our old clicker question. So there would be 5 multiple choice questions. They would take these independently, so on their own, as the name suggests, individual. So they do those individually, and they would complete those. They would get exactly 5 minutes to do those 5 questions in my class. And then after they completed those 5, they would see the same 5 again as part of the team readiness, and so that's the TRAT. And so then they would work together as a group on that team, the same 5 questions, solving that question together, discussing the answer amongst their team, whether they're online or in person, and come to the correct answer that they would then submit as a team for that score.
Okay,
And so the
so
nice thing about those, oh, go ahead, Marie.
no, go ahead, keep finishing.
Okay, so the nice thing about those, so certainly like the team score was often 100%, right? Most teams, when our teams were
Mhm.
5 or 6 students each, they would usually come to the correct answer for all the questions most of the time. So the average score on that was 100 or in the high 90s. But where I really gleaned the most information was for the responses that people would give for the IRAT. And so I can see those in real time. I have my laptop in the classroom and I have it open. For any given question, you can see what answers students are giving. So for example, if there's one question where I can see most people are choosing the wrong answer, I can see what the wrong answer is that they're choosing. And so that kind of gets right into your number 4, which is that
Mhm.
clarification session. And so for any concept, I would have maybe 1 or 2 PowerPoint slides where I would clarify a concept. And then that information that I got from the IRAT, where I could see where students were maybe missing a concept or had a little bit of a misunderstanding about some aspect of it that maybe I could see with one of my questions. That's where then I could really kind of hone in and say, I noticed a lot of people put this for that response, but really the correct answer is this, and this is why, and let me explain it. And so that clarification session was really important so that it could kind of bring everyone together on the same page. So I could see that what any miscommunications were or misunderstandings and make sure that everyone understood before we jumped into your number 5, which would be that application exercise. So we had an activity sheet. Students would complete several activities in a class, but after we talk about a concept, have the clarification session, we jump right into an application question where they would work on something together in their group, some sort of a problem or a question that they would then work on together.
So not only did your students have to come prepared for class, you did as well, because you had to be prepared for whatever muddy area they might have had and be able to have the content like the presentation slides or the application exercise to clarify and then give them something hands-on to do to reinforce those concepts.
Absolutely, absolutely. And some of those questions, we've used them from year to year, so I know
Hmm.
some of the common
Hmm.
mistakes that students
Pitfalls.
make. And so,
Hmm.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
exactly. So there's a final step in a peer evaluation, and this is where you really saw improvement to the collaboration and participation among members of a group. And you use a group member evaluation tool. So can you briefly share what this tool does? I know we're going to take a little bit deeper dive into this later.
Yeah, and I didn't use this initially, but I had so many student emails about how difficult they found working together with their group, with some people being in person and some people
Mm-hmm.
being online. And it was so I kind of realized within that first week I really needed to do something. So I actually adopted this tool on the fly in week 2 of my class. And so the way I use this tool is I basically had 2 questions that I asked them: how well is your team working together on the team quiz, the TRAT, and on that activity sheet where you're working together as a group? And then they would provide feedback. One student sort of described it as giving each other Yelp reviews. And I thought that was kind of appropriate, so that they kind of saw where they were and what their teammates thought about their contributions.
So it really looks like team-based learning involves a plethora of activities and really creates a comprehensive learning experience for your class.
Yes.
Let's take a walk through. Have you walk us through the process for setting up team-based learning in your course? I'm really kind of curious to see what's all involved with how you set it up.
Yeah, and one thing I loved about this is it was really easy. It was kind of very plug and play. So you can
Mm-hmm.
see what would happen is when you log right into this, you get the IRAT and the TRAT screens ready to grow. All you have to do is click that Start Creating Question box within the IRAT there. And once you do that, you can either type your question in. I had my questions previously, as I mentioned, because I was using iClicker in Blackboard already. And so I just opened another screen with Blackboard and I copied and pasted.
Mm-hmm.
You can put the text of your question and your answers in. One of the things I love about this is you see that little paper clip that's there. So you can actually
Mm-hmm.
include an image with the question or images with the answers as well. You can add as many answers as you want. Typically we had 4 or 5, but you can make that as much as you'd like. And then when you're done, you just click save and it saves that question
Mm-hmm.
automatically. Now, the great part about it is once you've created those 5 questions, they automatically copy into the TRAT. So you don't have to
Okay.
put them in there again. The only thing you have to do for the TRAT, you can see there's a select groups. The other great thing, it plays so well with Blackboard. You create your groups in Blackboard, you just click that select button, and just with one click, it puts your groups in. The
Nice.
module that lives right below the TRAT, which I didn't show just for sort of space constraints, is the grading module. And so the nice thing about this, you can use that slider bar to either include or not include the IRAT or the TRAT score. You can choose what proportion you want for each of those 2 activities to count for. When I did it, I made the IRAT count for more than the TRAT just to promote students really trying to work hard. Because again, as I mentioned, the TRAT scores were often near 100%. I
Mm-hmm.
really wanted students to have an incentive to really complete that note taking and
And be
study guide and to be
right.
prepared for
And
class.
be prepared for class. Exactly.
Yeah, yeah. And then once you're done with that, during class, the next thing that happens is when you're right there in class, you can open this up, which I did on my laptop,
Mm-hmm.
and you just click right ahead there. And then what'll happen is when you open it, you can choose to have it either open immediately or you can click and it'll give you a couple of options. Initially, my class began at 2 p.m. I used to have it where it would set at 2 p.m. and close at 2:05. For reasons the IT people still can't explain to me. Some people's laptops would say it's 1:58 when mine said it was 2 o'clock. And so I ended up switching to doing that last option, the open manually. So just in the classroom, once everyone was settled, at 2 o'clock, I hit open manually. It opens for everybody everywhere in the
Mm-hmm.
classroom online. And then I give them 5 minutes and then I close it manually. And then I do the same with the TRAT. So, and again, you can watch in real time to see what the student completion rate is right there on your laptop.
Awesome. Great. Thanks.
Yeah.
So you shared that your students struggled that first week of class with collaborating together, and you've got those 2 audiences, live and in person and virtual. You then introduced a peer evaluation component to the team-based learning activity using group member evaluation. And with this activity, students ranked themselves and their teammates on criteria you provided to them. So share with us how this tool worked.
Yeah, so for this tool, as I mentioned, I really just had 2 criteria. I had 2 questions. I asked them, how well is everyone in your team working on that team quiz together? And then how well did they collaborate on the activity sheet? And one of the nice things about this is for each of these 2 questions, students will evaluate themselves first, and then the tool invites them to evaluate their team
Mhm.
members. Initially, when I had this, I started out using a slider where they could give sort of a slider score between like 1 and 5, but students kind of struggled. They're like, well, what is a 2 versus a 4, right? Like, I don't really know. And so then I switched to this rubric rating instead.
Mhm.
So on the rubric, I basically have it going from 0 points to 4. And so I had it so that if a student doesn't show up at all, then they get the 0, the absent. And then depending on their level of contribution, either they were there but didn't contribute, or they had a minor, an intermediate, or significant contribution. Students use those as a sort of guidepost to decide how many points to assign them for the day for what they did, and then of course what each of their teammates did.
And were you surprised by the results of the evaluations completed? And can you share some of the outcomes of the information that became available to you?
Yeah, so one of the things I love, it generates a tremendous amount of data, maybe almost too much data, but I love the data. And so I really like that. And so for any given assignment, so this was one particular day in class, you can see that it shows you all your groups. I had 14 groups in that semester. You can use that little caret just to the left of the group name to open it up and then see individual students within that group. The nice thing about it tells you their progress in that first column. The next one gives you the average rating that they got for their efforts in their team. And then the third column is that self-assessment rating. So for example, I opened up team 2 there, you can see with the caret. So you notice person CM, they gave themselves the maximum score, so that full green bar, but you can see that some of their teammates, they have the orange bar, so they got a slightly lower score from some of their teammates. You can also see if a student doesn't complete the assignment, so like student EM there, it shows that there's no bar completed, so they didn't do it. I should point out too that the students in the class the grades that they give never counted as grades for the students. If you did the assignment, if you did the evaluation, you got all of the points.
Okay, so it's a matter of just doing it or not doing it.
Correct. Okay. And so then after that, you can actually, so click down. So if you view all, so this gives you a snapshot of the entire class. So you can see circled up there in the left corner, this is everyone in this particular assignment. You can see my 2 questions are on the left-hand column. You can see that across the top is that rating scale that I just described to you. So as a snapshot, you can see the whole course. If you were to sort of put your cursor over any of those little bubbles with the 2 letters, it would actually show you the student's name. So if you wanted to see, which are the students that are actually absent that day or didn't come in or aren't really contributing much. And then so after that, in the top right-hand corner, you can see there's the first group. So that'll let you drill down and look at just a single group. So for example, here, this is now looking at group 9. So you can see up at the top left-hand corner, it shows you it's just group 9. So now this is just a snapshot of group 9. So again, 2 questions are on the left, the scale across the top. You can see that, for example, here, everybody was present for the TRAT because nobody got the 0. But you can see one student, whoever SB was, must not have participated in the activity sheet because at least one person said that they weren't there. So that gives you that snapshot. And then you can drill down again. So up in the right-hand corner, you can pick first student. And so now this one would be an assessment of student SB, for example. And so again, the 2 questions are on the left. Now here, the columns, the first column represents that student's self-assessment. So in this example, you can see for the TRAT question, they gave themselves the maximum 4 points. And for the activity sheet, they gave themselves 4 points. The next column actually shows the reviews that SB gave to their teammates. So you can see she gave all 4 people a 4 out of 4 for the TRAT. And then below you can see for the activity sheet, the size of the dot represents how many people got that score. So 2 people got the 4 points, 1 person got 2 points, and 1 person got 0 points. And then after you look at her summary, I'm only showing you 2 more students in the group, even though there were 2 more. You can actually see their actual review for each of the students. And so their name would appear at the top and you can see what they are. Also, you can see the comments that the students leave. So you can click on that and show the comment. And also at the end of the assignment, you can download this in an Excel sheet and you can also look at all the comments that way as well. You can also see if they were read or not read based on whether or not they have that little blue sort of pill thing, whether they did it or not. And then finally the grades, so you can see, and again, as I mentioned, if they did it, they got the points. And so for me, they got half of their points if they gave their feedback, and then the other half of their points if they wrote a comment. So I wanted them to have a comment. So as long as they did it, they got their points. And so, for example, in this group 7, you can see that last person didn't do either thing. And so they didn't get the points, but everyone else did get all of their points just for doing it. So that's how it looks, what the grading looks like. So, and I should point out too, that these go automatically into Blackboard. So they will be uploaded right into Blackboard. You can schedule that publish date. You could say publish now, and then they move right into Blackboard. No downloading Excel sheets and uploading Excel sheet. It's just all magically moved. Absolutely fantastic.
Click of a button. Awesome.
Click of a button. Yeah.
So it sounds like adding the group member evaluation component to the team-based learning activity really resulting in an enriching experience for your students. In fact, you did a survey to your students. You want to talk a little bit about what that provided you back to you?
Yeah, so I did surveys throughout, and that kind of guided some of the changes that I made to sort of tweaking the assignments. But this was the one from the end of the semester survey, and I asked them if they thought that teamwork and participation improved. So you can see 60% of the class either agreed or strongly agreed with that. And so I thought that it was really positive. When I looked through the individual comments, people were very positive and felt that this really did make a difference for some of those groups that really struggled to work together. Some groups were just great working together and maybe didn't need that little push from the feedback fruits. But there were definitely groups that were really struggling hard, and this made a big difference for them.
And then as we have moved into the summer semester, what are your plans for the upcoming school year? Is team-based learning something that you're going to plan on doing again in your courses?
Yes, for sure. And I'm really like planning on using some time this summer to learn about even more tools. I made time to do the IRAD TRAD at the beginning of the class. The one thing, I had them do the group member evaluation. I gave them until the end of the day to complete that. But some students felt like, that they would forget to go back and do it, or they would just didn't have time, or they had to work right after class. So a lot of concerns there. I really wish I could steal back just 5 more minutes at the end so that they could complete it right there at the end of class before they leave. And I think one of the ways I could do it is using some more feedback fruit tools. So, maybe even uploading some lecture slides or doing some little videos and embedding questions that would be required so that I could maybe sort of nudge them even a little bit more to try and do more of that independent reading, but also maybe supplemented with maybe short little videos that could sort of test whether or not what they read on their own is sort of resonating with them. And so I definitely plan on using more tools in the future because they're very well received by students. I got 0 negative comments about the tool suite. And so I'm excited to embrace it.
I like your pioneering spirit. With that wraps what we were going to present and talk about. So if there are any questions from the group, we're happy to entertain those and go from there.
Yeah, there's one question we have in the chat from an anonymous attendee. Is there a difference between doing a TBL, a team-based learning activity, online or in person? Are students more or less engaged in virtual settings?
It's a great question. Did you see a difference between your two audience group types, student types?
Yeah, so for me, because it was, students had a choice every day to attend in person or online. And because students, they might have been identified as a close contact or become COVID positive. So they might be attending online one day and in person a different day, like even in the same week. So I don't have a really great way to track those two populations in terms of saying like, was performance higher for the in-person or for the people who were
because
online?
they were fluid.
Because they were fluid. But I will say the students who chose to be online tended that were online, not just maybe because of COVID, but maybe most of the semester. Those did tend to be my lowest performing students on exams. And I think for a lot of online students, they might not realize how incredibly important it is to be in class and be connected. And it's so easy to become distracted if you're just joining online. And so I definitely did see for the students who were the lower performers in my class, they tended to be the people who were not attending in person. Next semester, I mean, our whole department saw this, not just me. All of our classes are going to be face-to-face again. So it was definitely a challenge.
Awesome. Well, at least with the use of the tools, you had an active way of keeping those virtual students engaged and in communication with people that were physically in class, which is not an easy task to accomplish when you're not geographically together.
And I mean, I think for the motivated students, like they really felt still included in the class because of that. And it didn't feel like they were just watching a recording after the fact. They felt engaged during the class. And so I think that was really important.
Very important.